for joining us and sharing that insight all the way from London. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news and we stay in the zone. The European Commission has expressed its confidence that a deal to allow the UK to take part in one of the EU's flagship defence programmes will be concluded over the next 2 weeks, with enough time for member states to adjust their rearmament plans. Brussels and London have been engaged in talks since the summer to allow the UK to take part in the Bloc SAFE programme aimed at boosting joint procurement of European-made weapon systems as the EU looks to rearm aggressively in response to Russia's threat. EU member states have until the end of November to submit their national plans detailing how they would spend the shares they have been allocated under the €150 billion defence loan scheme. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Andrew Latham. He's a professor of international relations, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, looking at this, do you think that UK tries to take as much advantage of possible of EU and EU members, but they stay outside and they're not willing to, are they willing to contribute as much as EU members too, or this is just for their benefit?
Well, I think it's both and. It will be in the benefit of the British state. They'll collect more taxes, etc. But there's also bigger strategic motives here. They want to be part of the European defense ecosystem, as it were, and especially the defense industrial ecosystem. They want access to those markets. So there's both an economic incentive. BAE and Rolls-Royce and firms like that want to be part of the European market, want to sell goods to the Europeans. And on the other hand, there's also the strategic piece. Britain's security is tied into European security, and European security is in part dependent upon its defense industrial robustness. So from the British side, there's no real downside to this, except kind of technically they'll have to adjust their standards to conform with European standards on particular projects, etc. And then there are some big issues too about whether British firms can lead these joint programs or whether there can be merely subcontractors. I mean, this is what they're negotiating, some of the finer points. But there's no doubt that this is in Britain's interest, despite Brexit back in 2016.
Yes, and could closer defence cooperation with the EU signal a broader shift in UK-EU relations under Keir Starmer?
Yes, I think many Brits now regret Brexit. The promise of leaving the European Union and striking out a strategic autonomy, as it were, both defence and economics, hasn't really panned out. And I think if a lot of Brits could turn back the clock, they would, and they would vote differently. This government certainly represents that view. It wants tighter and better relations, economic, military, etc., with the European Union. But of course, there are European states which welcome and embrace that. But there are also European states that are wary of the Brits and that have a long memory, as it were, and don't particularly want British defence firms playing a prominent role on the continent.
And how might this deal affect the UK's strategic alignment with NATO and its defence relationship with the United States, if it does?
There'll be a little bit of tension there, but I don't think it will be dramatic. The UK, of course, still is pursuing AUKUS. It still wants a presence in the Indo-Pacific. The special relationship with the United States is still more or less intact, and it would like to have access to American markets, etc. To the extent that these firms have to align themselves with European standards as opposed to American standards, there's likely to be some tension there, but manageable tension. These firms, these big firms, BAE and Rolls-Royce in particular, have been doing business across the Channel and across the Atlantic at the same time for a long time. They know how the game is played. They wouldn't be advocating for this if this participation in the SAFE program, the European Security Action for Europe program, if they didn't think it was in their best interest. So I think this is a set of tensions that can be navigated with relative ease by the firms involved.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Andrew Latham for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we move on. Hundreds of Serbian students have begun a march from Belgrade to Novi Sad to mark a year since a train station roof collapsed that killed 16 people. The tragedy sparked a nationwide student-led protest movement that has challenged President Alexander Vucic's 13-year rule. Demonstrators are demanding a snap election and greater accountability from the government. The main commemoration is set for November 1st outside of the Novi Sad's railway station, featuring 16 minutes of silence followed by speeches from students. Let's listen into what some of the students have shared.
Sa takvom vlašću teško da ima nekog rješenja, samo vršiti pritisak. Eto, mora pritisak jer on sigurno sam od sebe da ode, nema šanse, još teže i da raspiše izbore, tako da samo pritisak jer je toliko već poljuljan da je izgubio sve konce u glavi.
Now for this discussion we welcome Sasha Dobrijevic. He's a diplomatic international journalist, joins us live from Belgrade, Serbia. Thank you very much, Sasha, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how has current President Vucic's government managed public dissent and accountability since the tragedy? As we know that nobody has been arrested so far, although although they have been held in the court, or have they? Please let us know.
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, yes, it was yesterday 1 year since that tragedy and nobody is arrested. I mean, there are few people who are arrested, but that is nothing compared to the real thing, how many people need to be prosecuted for this tragedy and this corruption. And yes, we are witnessing the really big and deep gaslighting and manipulation by media, by the statements. For example, a few days ago, when journalists asked our president what does he think about the Serbia gathering at in Novi Sad yesterday, he said, and what is in Novi Sad? Some kind of football game. And that make students even more angry, even more willing to make some kind of change, because everybody knows what happened a year ago and everybody knows what is going to happen at Saturday, actually yesterday in Novi Sad. So again, we have that situation that all public transportation was cancelled. There were no trains, there were no buses. So I think that the fear is spreading all over the ruling party, and they are doing their best to make something that people can't gather. But even with this kind of situation, nobody can take away this right to assembly and the right to gather. And yes, the media, or with the national frequency, they said that it was like 15,000 people, but that was a really big lie. We are witnessing the very, very much larger number, and it was like, I don't know, we are waiting for official number, but I think it was like 300,000 people.
Wow, that's a very big crowd, Sasha. And do you think media was maybe downplaying these numbers? And do you think can this student-led movement realistically force early elections or meaningful political reform in Serbia? And what impact has this movement had on public opinion towards the current president so far?
First of all, students make something that nobody did for decades now, because they awake people, really, because walking from city to city and talking with people makes some kind of awareness of this corruption and this situation in Serbia. For example, students from Novi Pazar, it's like 400 kilometers away from Novi Sad, they walk like 12 or more days to make people aware. So people from all cities make some kind of welcoming students, and of course that's the main thing, to make people aware what is happening. I know that the ruling government is delaying this kind of elections, and they don't want to make the normal democratic way to choose another government. But yes, they can't do anything anymore. The gaslighting of media is not working anymore because now, as I said before, diplomacy is on the street. So students make a large difference, a huge difference, because they make people awake.
Right. And do you think, can you tell us how has the government responded to these calls so far? As you earlier in your first answer, you did mention a little bit about how President said, "Oh, what is happening in Novi Sad today?" Is there any other comments like this, or do you think? Can you share how has government responded so far?
Well, during this year, the main thing that they did is like making a huge pressure on media. I mean, objective media, journalists as well. So many using police force on students. But lately, European Union vote for that new resolution about Serbia, and now the whole world knows about this situation here, and they can't do anything to gaslight people. I mean, there is more gaslighting from the ruling party, but that is like disappearing more and more. So European Union make that resolution, and they openly said that this situation need to be investigated, that Serbian government need to make investigate this whole situation, the whole tragedy situation. And yes, I personally sent an open letter to European Union, to European Parliament, and I got the answer from Marta Kos and Ursula von der Leyen, and they said the same, that Serbia needs to make that investigation, that Serbia need to make that democratic way for elections and more. So I think that this is the end. We need to wait a little bit more, but this is the end. The awareness, the loud voices from European Union now are making some kind of biggest change in our country.
That is very insightful. Thank you, Sasha Dobrivich, for sharing that insight all the way from Belgrade and letting us know what's happening on the ground. Thank you very much. Now we stay in the